Okay, so PFSense is complete for now. So that's task 1 done. We're going to start task number 2 now. Install Windows Server 2008 R2. We'll install a few different roles, import some users out of a CSV, so we've got some users to play around with. We'll configure up some policies, a file server. We'll also probably configure WSUS. I haven't listed it here, but we might put Windows Server Update Services as another role that we'll install. So let's get started with 2008 R2 install. So very much like the PFSense installation, we are going to install a brand new machine. Go with typical. So I'm just going to install the operating system later. No real definitive reason around that. Just as a method to installing our virtual machine. So 2008 R2. Here we give it a name. So it is going to be called Mel DC1. If we flick back into our diagram there, you can see right in the middle, Mel DC1, Windows Server 2008 R2 server, and hit next. 40 gig is fine. Store virtual disks as a single file is the option that I always choose. Also remember that this is a thin provision disk as well, so we won't consume 40 gig of hard drive space. It will expand out to 40 gig if we need it. And we always have the option to expand this even further if 40 gig's not enough. And to customize, what's in here by default is enough to get the virtual machine running. So 2 gig and 1 CPU. Got a bit of extra resources that I can play around with, so I'll just bump that up to 4 gig. I'll leave it as 1 CPU. The only other change here is to add it to the Melbourne network. Click finish. See our virtual machine up and running. I go in here again and we power it on. See that nothing's going to happen. It's got nothing to boot from. Go into our settings, our CD-ROM settings, choose our ISO. And choose 2008 R2. Select that option. Give it a quick reset. Should boot into those. Probably have not seen this loading screen for a long time. So as I said, it's going to be a 2008 R2 installation for now. We will migrate our domain controllers to more recent versions as we progress through this lab. But we're going to start with 2008 R2. So we get settings here. So I'm in Australia, so I choose Australia. You may find that the mouse is a little bit lacking when you're installing virtual machines. This is primarily because we haven't got VMware tools installed as of yet. Sometimes the mouse might be a bit too difficult to use and you might need to use the shortcut keys on the keyboard. So for instance, Control, oops, it's not what I wanted, it's Alt, not Control. Change that back to Alt N to click Next, and Alt I to install. Setup is starting. So we have the option of the full installation and the core installation. memory serves me right, if you do choose the core installation, you cannot change it to a full installation or to a GUI based installation afterwards for 2008 R2. So I'm going to go with the data center full installation version. Accept the license terms. Always just hit custom here just to see where it is that I'm going to be installing my operating system to. I only have that one disk that we created with 40 gigabytes. Click next. So this will just go away and install Windows Server 2008 R2. I'll pause the video for now and we'll come back once it's complete. Okay, so the OS is now installed. I just needed to punch in a first time password for administrator and then log in, and I'm left with this nostalgic desktop. So the first thing I normally do here is I'll just quickly configure up the network settings. So just as a quick reminder, you can see MailDC1, it's got an IP address of 10.10, gateway of 10.1. So in those details, yeah, 10.10, subnet mask is 24-bit, gateway is 10.1, and this will be a domain controller and a DNS server as well. It's not a DNS server now, so it's not going to resolve any names at this stage, but that's how we're just going to set it up for now. And what we can actually quickly do, tap here and configure the network. We can test our internet access from this virtual machine. See, that's really got connectivity, and you will notice that if we try to do it with, say, a name, it will fail because no DNS is working. But we'll test that theory out a little bit later once we've configured this machine up as a domain controller. Okay, so let's install the first role, which is our domain controller role. Actually, first thing we'll need to do is rename that computer. Give it a different computer name. Obviously, this does not match the virtual machine name, so we'll do that for it. Have no domain, so we'll just leave this DC1, and it's going to do a reboot. I won't pause the recording because I reckon this will go pretty quick. So we also need to install VMware tools and get some updates on this machine. If you're familiar with installing 2008 R2 these days, out of the box, it's missing some of the key Windows updates that is required to be manually installed prior to getting Windows updates from the internet. As a matter of fact, I think the default install comes with Internet Explorer version 8, which isn't really going to allow us to do too much. The other thing is VMware tools will want to install with a SHA-2 code signing, which this server out of the box is not compatible with. It is still on SHA-1, so we'll need to get some Windows updates on this machine very shortly in order to progress with this lab. But let's get the first role installed. So we're inside the server manager. We come across to add roles, and the role that we're after is the Active Directory domain service. As soon as you click on that, this has popped up saying .NET is a required feature, so we're happy to install that as well. Through next, gives us a little bit of details about Active Directory. Install. So this actually just installs the role for Active Directory domain services. The next bit is now to actually promote this machine to a domain controller, and it's basically saying it right here with this link, or you could run dcpromo.exe, the run command. Select the advanced mode installation. So obviously this is a greenfield site for JT Airlines, so we're going to be starting from scratch. So we'll be creating a new domain in a new forest. It's asking us for the qualified domain name, so what I go with is jtairlines.internal. That can be really anything to match your own organization or test environment, but for me it's jtairlines.internal, so it's only going to be an internally routable domain. It's not going to be externally routable. The reason being is probably 75% of organizations I deal with still have internally routable domains. That's slowly shifting, so there are some conversions going around to migrations to using externally routable domains, such as, I guess in our instance, we would use jtairlines.com, for instance. But for now, it's jtairlines.internal. The next step will be to verify the NetBIOS name, so I'm happy with JT Airlines. So we'll be able to discover this domain name by just using JT Airlines. Forest functional level. The fact that this is the first domain in the forest, so this is going to be we're not going to have any 2008 or 2003 servers running in this environment, so we can choose 2008 R2. So we're also additionally going to install the DNS server, which is what we want. This also being the first server will also be the global catalog server. It's okay, first server. Some default paths, which I never change. This can be important, if you ever have to do a recovery of your Active Directory database. You may need this password, so definitely, well, you must provide a password, and you definitely need to keep this somewhere safe in the event that you need to actually restore Active Directory on a new server. There we go. That's going to go probably spend a few minutes configuring services. I'll tick this box here so that it will reboot automatically once it's complete, and then we'll continue on. Okay, so 2008 R2 has now been configured as a domain controller. So we're presented with this screen. Now, I just want to reiterate, for all intents and purposes for this environment, this machine, albeit a virtual machine, as far as the environment is concerned, it's actually going to be considered like a physical machine, a physical standalone box with Windows Server 2008 R2 installed. The reason being is that in the future videos we'll end up having installing some ESX servers, which will form the virtual environment for this lab. So when we do things like VM backups, for instance, this machine, albeit virtualized, will be actually targeted as a physical machine, and will do agent-based backups, for instance. So that's just something to note as we move along. So we're ready to log into our virtual machine. As you can see now, it's not a local login anymore. It is now a domain-based login. So user account gets uplifted to the main admin account. Go. So that's now the domain controller. And if we have a quick look there, so we'll now configure DHCP. So that's another role. So we here and right mouse click in our server manager under roles, add role. Next, select our DHCP server, settings here. It already understands our network, or it's binding 10.10, so that's the IP address of this server, as the interface that will assist serving other clients on this network with IP addresses. Parent domain, jtalliance.internal, preferred DNS server. Now be this IP address, validate, don't use wins. We'll add our first scope. Let's call this the Melbourne scope. It's 192.168.10.100 to say 168.10.50. So when clients join this network, it scans for DHCP for an IP address. It's going to get an IP address in scope. The default gateway, which is 10.1. There we have our scope. I disabled DHCP v6 and I will use these current credentials to authorize this DHCP server as active. Install. Take too long. Goes automatic. Updating is not enabled, so we'll fix all that up in a little bit. But as far as the DHCP is concerned, we are now installed. See that now as another role that's being configured. I believe, yeah, we do settings. I haven't used the server manager for a long time. Typically, I think it's DHCP and looked at it from the DHCP console. Bring this out a bit. See IPv6, we see that scope that we've just created. Here, the pool of addresses that are allowed to be used. These are the current leases, so nobody's actually asked for an IP address and has received one. We've got reservations, so if we want to actually provide an IP reservation to a certain device, we can do that in here. And here are our scope options for this scope. So when a device does get an IP address, you'll also be told that your router or default gateway is 10.1, your DNS server is 10.10, which is this server. The domain name that you are operating on is the jtalliance.internal domain. So that is DHCP configured.